So, if you've been following along with this series that we've been doing for quite a while now called the 5D, I'm not going to do a summary other than just to say a reminder of this abbreviated version of the map. The 5D refers to the five dimensions that scripture talks about as our interior, as the summary of our personhood. That we have five dimensions and they are interrelated, they are interconnected, and we can map certain things that are going on in our life based upon this rubric of the five dimensions. With our higher power, submitting to Him, we have our soul, we have our will, we have our mind, we have our body, and we have the social aspect of who we are. What we have covered so far in the series is we spent quite a bit of time on the mind and both the thoughts and the emotions that comprise that dimension. We did a deep dive in the body and spent several sessions talking about the body as it relates to recovery and different aspects of recovery. Last week, we talked about the will. Today, we're going to talk about the social aspect and, in particular, relationships. So, we're going to spend 2 sessions talking about that. Then we'll transition to the last dimension, which is the soul, and kind of put all this together. So, today, we're going to talk about relationships, part of the social domain. And I'm going to try to interweave 3 different disciplines into the teaching today: theology, philosophy, and psychology. Hopefully, it's a cohesive set of principles that make sense to you. Otherwise, it might be a hot mess, and we'll just see how it goes. So, I want to begin with the beginning, and that is I do believe in the creation narrative found in the book of Genesis, where we do have a creator and he created us in his image. And in the creation narrative that takes place over 6 days, we see that this God who created everything in existence declared it to be good every day of creation. So he created all the planets, he created the earth, the sky, the waters, the oceans, the stars, the moon. He created everything over the course of 6 days, and at the end of each day, he spoke over it and said, "This is good." So that he was pleased with what he created. And that was the refrain all the way to day 6. And he created humanity. He created the very first man. And this is the first time in the creation narrative that he looked upon what he had created and he declared something's not good. Something's missing. And what he specifically said is, it is not good for humanity to be alone. It's not good for man to be alone. And this is such a striking sentence from God, because if we look at the context, Adam is living in paradise and it's perfect. There is no sin, there is no evil, and he has this perfect communion, connection with God. And God looks at this and says, there's still something missing. That this man that I created in my image doesn't just need connection vertically with me, but it's not good for him to be alone horizontally. He needs human connection. And what a statement that is. And why is it that that would be inadequate? Why is that not good for humanity to be alone? It goes back to the fact that we are made in God's image. It's called the imago Dei in Latin. That is the theological phrase for the image of God. That is, we are made the way God is wired and constructed. We reflect who God is. And part of the way we reflect who God is we are made for connection. And so when we look at this, what the symbol that we're going to use to represent this connection is a circle. So what's described here in this circle is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, theologically called the Trinity or the Godhead, that is a self-sufficient circle of agape love. One God, three persons, living in connection, living in community that is sufficient. That each member of this Godhead is outwardly focused in agape love towards the other two members. And it's not like this God created us because he was lonely. Everything in this original circle was sufficient. It is self-sufficient. We are made in God's image, meaning we are made for circles. We are made for connection. We are made for intimacy. And that's why our spiritual formation, as we become more and more like God, it is profoundly social. Because it's not enough just to love God. The greatest command is not to just love God, but to love others, to love vertically and to love horizontally. And so when Adam was created, and he is part of this circle of sufficiency, this agape community of love, and he is part of it, God declares it's not enough. It's not good that you're alone and you're just connected to me. And so I am going to create a partner, another circle for you. And that was the very first marriage. That was the very first covenant partnership, covenant relationship. And Adam had a circle, and it was with Eve. And that was meant to be a circle of connection. And Adam, it wasn't enough that he had vertical connection. He needed horizontal connection. And the words I'm going to use to describe these two circles is communion and community. And the teaching is this: we got to have both. That one without the other is inadequate. That we cannot get our needs met by just one. It's not enough. It's insufficient. We need both circles in our life. We need horizontal circles of connection called community. And we need to be a part of this perfect circle found in God, where he invites us to be caught up in it. And we need both. We need communion with God and community with others in order for us to be healthy, to be to meet our potential, to be who God created us to be. And if you think about from the very beginning, the very first couple, the way God designed reproduction of the species to happen is that these two in their union would co-create with him new life. And what happens when a baby is born? When a baby is born, they are born into, ideally, a circle of connection. And that very first circle, as soon as the baby takes his or her first breath, that very first circle of connection is with the mother. And ideally, the father. But there are some kind of caregivers that form that first circle as this brand new human is entering into existence and developing and growing. And that is the most fundamental circle, the circle of caregiver and child. And eventually this human will go on to have many other circles in their life. And it could be circles at school, circles of friends, circles of a sports team, circles that are neighbors, extended family. And as this human grows up, work circles, community circles, and other circles. And here's the fact: this original circle, this family of origin, or this caregiver-child circle, this connection, is the most fundamental attachment, the most fundamental circle that affects and influences every other circle for the rest of this human's life. And let me give you a few biblical principles about these circles. We've already mentioned we need both. We need a horizontal circle It's not good for man to be alone. And we need the vertical circle. We need both in order to get our needs met and in order to meet our potential. Another biblical principle is this side of Eden, this side of what's called the fall in our imperfect world, this side of heaven and this side of Eden, where we are in the in-between place, where things are not fully redeemed and repaired like they will be in heaven, and things are in a broken state because of the fall after Eden. What we have is every single horizontal circle that you will ever have is fragile, meaning it's easily broken, temporary, meaning it will not last, no matter what, and it is insufficient, meaning it cannot meet all of your needs absent of this communion, this vertical circle. So every single one of these is broken. Every single one of these is fragile. Every single one of these is temporary. That the only sufficient circle is this one, self-sufficient. The only one that is unbreakable, invincible, is this one. The only one that is permanent is this one. Every other circle in our life, we are going to be let down. We are going to be disappointed. We may try to get all our needs met in that circle, but that is impossible. They cannot be a substitute for God and the way He meets some of our deepest needs. So when our circles break, in every single circle we have, every single horizontal circle in our life, work, family, marriage, parent-child, neighbors, whatever, every one of these will break. And when they do break, the only place that we can find healing for that is in this one. And so that is a biblical understanding of the social aspect of who we are and how we're created. That our original circle will influence and affect all future circles in our life. Now, what I'm describing in psychological terms is attachment theory, but I'm using a theological lens to talk about it. At the end of the teaching, I'm going to explain 3 ways that I find attachment theory to be incomplete when we look at it from a biblical lens. Now, I found a lot of value in attachment theory, and I'm not knocking attachment theory, but I think it has a couple of shortcomings, and we're going to get to that later. The understanding is this, that, and let me give an example of a circle that's beautiful to me that Jacqueline and I just enjoyed last weekend. Last weekend, a rare occasion happened. Jacqueline and I are in a blended family, and we've got 2 kids, her biological kids, that live at home with us. And then my biological children are all grown and out of the home. And that's our blended family. And when it comes to my children, biologically, it's very rare to get all of them and their significant others and our grandchildren all together in one place to enjoy time and community together. But that happened last weekend. And it was so life-giving. It was so beautiful. It just filled and overflowed my father's heart. It was such a great time of this circle. But there was one point where we were all gathered around this big table, all 12 of us, gathered around this big table, enjoying a meal together. And I had this thought, and I did not share it because I did not want to ruin the day. So instead, I'll share it with you and ruin your day. But here's this thought. And this is true for every circle, every horizontal circle. There is one person at this table right now that will say goodbye to everyone else, that will watch everyone else exit this world. And I know that's a depressing thought, but that's also reality. That's what I mean by every horizontal circle is fragile, it will be broken, it's insufficient, and it's temporary. And I don't say that to depress you. You know, some of you are probably thinking, I'm so glad that I listened to this teaching today. Thank you, Roy. You're so encouraging. But here's my point. This isn't enough. That this has to be supplemented with this. That this has to be caught up into this circle in order for us to have a fulfilling existence. that we can't just rely upon these broken, temporary, fragile, insufficient horizontal circles in our life. The reason being is there are 5 universal human needs that are legitimate, and every human has these. And I've reworked them because I like to create mnemonic devices and alliterations to help me remember things. And so I took these 5 needs and I put them into a framework that I could remember and I can easily explain. And it spells out the 5 needs spell out the word alive. And so when we meet these 5 needs in healthy ways through horizontal and vertical circles, we feel alive. We feel fulfilled. When we meet them exclusively in horizontal circles or in artificial circles, which that's exactly what addiction is an attachment that's meant to try and meet these needs, but it doesn't. It's an attachment to a person or pixels or whatever. And it is a substitute for this circle. And it leaves us empty, thirsty, and we keep going back to it in an insane way, thinking that it's going to meet these 5 needs, and it never does. It's artificial. It's destructive. You feel alive when you meet these needs in legitimate ways through horizontal and vertical connections. But we bring death and destruction into our life when we try to replace this circle with this circle. And that's what addiction is, basically. Let's look at these 5. The very first one I call accepted. Every human wants to be accepted. We enter into this original circle with our primary caregivers, and we're wondering, will I be accepted for who I am? And my flaws, my failure, everything. Am I lovable? Am I accepted? And if this legitimate need is unmet in this original circle, then the core belief that we begin to develop is, I am not accepted. I feel left out in every circle I'm in because this one affects all others, all future circles. So I feel like a misfit. I feel like I don't belong. I feel like I'm not accepted. So to compensate for that, I'm going to perform. And I must hide certain parts of who I am so that in these circles, I will be accepted. And part of what we do when we feel like we have to hide parts of who we are in order to have this need met, because in the original circle, we did not feel accepted. We did not feel lovable. We begin to perform and we begin to hide the undesirable, the unlovable, the unacceptable parts of who we are. That is the soil of a secret sexual basement right there. That is the soil of addiction. And one of the things that we often do as we act out is we consume pixels. We consume pornography. And part of the thinking is, well, it never rejects me. A human might reject me, but this artificial, at least I never experience rejection. When we substitute this circle for this circle, it brings death, destruction, and it doesn't legitimately meet this legitimate need. When we go to this circle, because it wasn't met here, and so we go to God to have this need of acceptance met, we have Jesus as an example of how God accepts us. Jesus, God, became a human for 33 years, and for 3.5 years, he had a public ministry. And for the 3.5 years, when you look at the common thread that goes through the behavior of Jesus, God in the flesh, interacting with other people, who did he spend the most time with? Who had the most real estate in his 3.5 years? It was the rejects of society, those that culture would not accept. They were called sinners. That's who he gravitated towards. That's who he hung out with. That's who he had meals with. And he was criticized by the religious people for doing that. Because what Jesus practiced is what I'm going to call grace-based acceptance, not performance-based acceptance. God doesn't look at us the way the world looks at us. He accepts us before we perform. He accepts us for who we are. And when we try to look for all of these broken circles to meet that need, and that's all we rely on, and we bypass this circle, we won't get that need met. Instead, we substitute. And that's where addiction comes in. So that's the first need, acceptance. The second one, I'm going to call looked upon. The very first experience that hopefully all of us have when we enter into existence as an infant is our eyes lock eyes with our mother, and we feel looked upon. In fact, I don't know if you can handle this or not. I've watched this study before. It was done on video. You can find it on YouTube. I don't think I could watch it again because it's very disturbing, but they actually did studies where mothers were brought into a lab and they were recorded, and they took their infant children and they held them in front of them, and they would do two things. First, they would make eye contact and they would engage the infant, and the infant would just light up and just glow, interact with the mother, and it would be demonstrated on their face how secure and happy and engaged and alive that infant was. But then the second part of the study that they recorded was now they instructed the mother, whatever you do, don't make eye contact. Hold the child, but look away, and don't make any eye contact whatsoever. And it is heartbreaking to watch the reaction of the infant. At first, they look confused, and they're trying to lock eyes with the mother, and the mother won't do it. And then they begin to wonder, and their eyes begin to shift, and they don't feel secure, and often they begin to cry. They don't feel looked upon. When we enter into this original circle, what we're asking in that first circle of connection is, does anyone see me? Do I matter? Am I looked upon? Am I known? Am I even noticed? Does anyone recognize me? Does anyone validate who I am as a person and my voice and my perspective? And when this need is not met, this is a legitimate need. Every human has it. When it's not met in this circle, it influences every other future circle. And when it's not met in this circle, when we don't feel seen, we don't feel like we matter, we don't feel like we're known, we're not recognized, we're not validated, we will pursue attention in other circles. And we will begin to manage the persona, the image of what other people think about us so that we will be looked upon. This is incredibly obvious in social media, where people will post things and what they are hoping will happen is someone will click on like. Someone will heart this. Someone will respond, and I can feel looked upon. And if I can't get it in these circles, maybe I could at least get it digitally. And when we don't get it here, and we bypass getting our need to be looked upon and seen and known with God, we create an artificial reality to do that. And when it comes to acting out, it creates this illusion that we are seen and that we are desirable, and it's counterfeit. It's artificial, and it will not meet the legitimate need of being looked upon and known and noticed and recognized and validated. But we can get that need met here because God created us. He knows us intimately. He looks upon us in a deeper way than any vertical connection. And what is amazing with God is we are fully known, fully seen. There's no secrets with God. He knows things about you that you don't even know about yourself. He knows every centimeter of the secret basement. And yet he still accepts you. He still loves you. Not because you performed well, but because that's what God is. God is love. And only he can fully satisfy that legitimate need of being looked upon. When we bypass him, we find alternatives. The third need is what I'm going to call independence. Did I spell that right? No, I didn't. You know what I'm saying. Independence. So with that need, we enter into our original circle and we're asking, can I be myself? Is there a space where I can be my authentic self? Can I be autonomous? Can I be free? Can I be free to be me? And one experiment you can do is you can go to a local park, go to a playground, and you can almost tell which children in that playground have secure attachment and which ones don't. Which ones feel independence because of that secure attachment and which ones don't. You'll notice two types of children at the playground. The first type of child will stay very close to the bench where their caregiver is, and they don't venture off much because they don't feel like that connection will be reliable. They don't feel secure, therefore they don't feel free to explore and roam. The second kind of child that you'll notice at the playground is the child that feels freedom to go all over the playground and play. Every once in a while, they'll look back to the bench to make sure, is my caregiver still there? But they feel like in this circle, this caregiver has proven that they are reliable. I can count on them to be there. Therefore, I feel independent and free and autonomous to explore and meet my full potential. That's what we're talking about here. If you grew up in an environment where this need was not met and you felt like your caregivers were very controlling of you, that they smothered you, that you could not be yourself, that you lost yourself in this original circle, then what often happens is in our addiction attachment, that is a counterfeit to the freedom and independence that we want. And we think, okay, here's how I can be autonomous. Here's how I can be free. I can create this private reality that no one knows about, and I can be free there. And what we did not realize is that this attachment, though it feels like freedom, actually leads to the deepest bondage and slavery we've ever experienced in our life. It wasn't real. It didn't meet that need. When we turn to God and this circle to meet that need for independence, his love, kind of like that child at the playground, liberates us to be free, to become fully actualized, to meet our potential, to become the person that God created us to be. It's through submission to him, not freedom from him, that we find true freedom, freedom to meet our potential. The B, the fourth one, is valued. Every human enters into this original circle of connection asking, do I matter? Am I worthy? Am I significant? Am I treasured? Am I celebrated for who I am? And if we don't feel like we matter in this original circle, if we're told that we're a burden, if we're told that we're not enough, if we feel like we were a disappointment, if we feel like we've been abandoned or neglected, that we're just not a priority in this original circle, then it develops this core belief deep down inside of us that I am not lovable. And I've got to prove my value through my achievements in the rest of my circles for the rest of my life. And addiction becomes the way that we medicate the pain from not feeling like we're enough, that we're valued. When we skip this and we go to this, it doesn't meet our needs. But when we go to God to meet this legitimate need of feeling valued and feeling like we matter and that we're worthy and we're significant and we're celebrated, we're treasured, Listen to what God says in his love letter to us in the Bible. He says, you are precious. You are loved. And my love for you is not earned. It is simply declared. And if you ever doubt my love for you, I want you to remember that I found you to be of so much value that I sacrificed my only beloved son for you. That means that we have immense value in the eyes of God, that he demonstrated, he proved his love for us by sacrificing his only son. Now, for many of you on the call, I care about you deeply, but I can't imagine sacrificing one of my kids or my grandkids for your flourishing, for your benefit. That kind of love is mysterious and beyond me. But that is the value that God proved that he has in you. In fact, this is how we must find our identity. We must find our value. We must find our identity is in what God declares over us. And this is what he says. You are my beloved son. You are my beloved daughter. And in you, I am well pleased, not because you performed well, not because of what you've done or did not do, but because love is who I am. And I have proven it, I've demonstrated it, and I have declared it over you. The very last universal need is what I'm going to call emotional safety. That's the E. And what I mean by emotional safety is we enter into this original circle and we're asking, can I bring my emotions, my interior, can I bring my internal life into this space and externalize it and express my emotions, talk about my interior life? And is it safe, or am I going to be attacked? Am I going to be dismissed? Am I going to be invalidated? Am I going to be shamed? Am I going to be abandoned? Is my interior, the real me, is it welcome in the space? And if we grew up in an environment where the environment was volatile, or it was silent and distant and no one expressed interior life, no one expressed emotions. And if you did express emotions, you were criticized for it. Or if you just felt like everyone's absent and everyone's detached and it's not safe for me to talk about my interior life, then what we did to compensate is we learned to hide our emotions. We learned to suppress our emotions. And we learned to numb our emotions through our addiction. Our addiction became the way we regulated emotions because we couldn't do it in these circles. Because in the original circle, that wasn't allowed. You can't do that. This is especially true for men growing up. In many original circles and in the culture around us that we'll talk about next week, the message that we receive is if we show emotion, even as a boy, stop crying. Stop acting like a girl. Be a man. If you're going to cry, go to your room. Come back to me when you can talk to me like a man. And there are these social messages that we receive that emotions are not acceptable. Emotions are feminine traits. And often with our father, the only legitimate emotion that we saw from him was anger. And we learned that that is the only legitimate emotion that a man can express. When it comes to this need for emotional safety, if it wasn't met in this circle, it affects every future circle. But instead of going to a place where we can regulate our emotions in an unhealthy, destructive way, God invites us to him and he says, I will be your, and this is the word he uses in scripture, I will be your refuge. I'll be your safe place. That word refuge means tower or fortress, that you can come under my shelter and you are safe. Why are you safe? Because I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I will never abandon you. And I am ever present for you, especially in your time of trouble. So those are the 5 needs. Now, what I don't want you to hear from this teaching today is, okay, For the men who created secret sexual basements, it's not their fault because they didn't get their needs met in their childhood, and so they had no choice. This this is the logical extension that happened. That this is that it. They're off the hook for this. That's not what I'm saying at all. This may help explain why we entered into the secret basement, but it in no way excuses it. It does not absolve us of the ownership that we need to take, because no one gets these needs met fully in this circle, and not everyone creates a basement. So we can't say that it forced us. What we can say is it's part of the roots. That I had legitimate needs that I tried to meet in illegitimate ways because I bypassed community and communion in my life, vertical and horizontal connection. And instead, I created an alternative reality to try and get these needs met. And number one, it didn't work. Number two, it caused destruction and death in my life and in my relationships. So, in closing, let me talk about attachment theory, and then a word for the betrayed and a word for the betrayers, and we'll call it a wrap. 3 reasons why I think attachment theory, though it is helpful, it is incomplete. Number one, attachment theory treats all these horizontal circles as the whole picture. It has no category for this, for vertical connection. And like a lot of psychological tools, it leaves God out. And so it treats all of these as this is the whole picture. These are the only circles of connection we have. And that's incomplete. That's not the whole picture. Number two, attachment theory does not locate the root of the problem. What Scripture teaches is that every single one of these broken horizontal circles is simply a system or a symptom of the fall. That this side of Eden, that's why they're all broken. And they don't just need repair horizontally, they need redemption vertically. We need the supplemental circle here in order to get our legitimate needs met through intimacy with God, self, and others. And finally, the only third challenge I have with attachment theory is the way it prescribes the remedy for insecure attachment. If you don't have a secure attachment, if you have one of the other attachment styles, here's the remedy. Another broken circle. And oftentimes it's a therapist. And somehow for 1 hour a week in that attachment with the therapist, it's supposed to repair the brokenness and the unmet needs. And it's bypassing the only sufficient circle that exists. So with that being the case, let me address the betrayed partners first, and then the betrayers. Betrayed partners. A couple things I want you to understand. First, I want you to understand that God accepts you right now as you are in your trauma, in your grief, in your despair, in your confusion, in your loneliness, in your anger. He accepts you just as you are. Just because you've been through this incredible nightmare, it has not altered his acceptance of you. Secondly, I do encourage you, if you haven't already done it, to have a horizontal connection, a circle of at least 1 to 3 other betrayed partners who've been through what you've been through, and they can help supplement these 5 needs in your life. The reason being, you can't really look at your primary attachment right now with your partner to meet these needs met, because he has proven he's not been honest and he's not been safe. And you're going to feel this pull, this tension of, he used to be my go-to person. He used to be my safety net, and I draw to him, but then I withdraw because I have this tension of wanting to get my needs met by him and then remembering what he did to me. And that's legitimate, and that's okay. What could really be helpful for you if you don't have it in your life is to have some kind of circle of other betrayed partners that can help you be alive right now. Thirdly, understand that you were in a relationship with a man who was not fully there. He was not healthy. He was not well. He was fragmented. He was not integrated. He had a secret reality that you did not know about. And only part of him was showing up to your circle. And so just to understand that was the reality. And hopefully he is doing his work, genuine work of recovery and work internally to become an integrated man who doesn't have alternative realities with you and who can be honest, loving, and whole and healthy and becomes a safe person that you can begin to have some of these alive needs met with him. Hopefully he's doing that work. But understand the relationship that you had was just with a part of him, not all of him. Finally, for the betrayed partners, let God's voice that says, "You are my beloved daughter," let that be louder than the voice of shame inside that keeps telling you, "I wasn't enough." Your partner's failure was never about your insufficiency. It was about his own brokenness. And so don't allow yourself to carry that shame. Let God's voice, his declaration over you, be the loudest voice in your life. Turn to him to meet these alive needs and have a safe circle of sisters that can help supplement those alive needs in your recovery right now. For the betrayers, first thing I want to say right off the bat, stop performing. Stop it. Here's what you need. You need to be fully known by God and by a circle of at least 1 to 3 safe men. No more performing, no more deception, no more image management. Let your interior be externalized to God and that safe circle of brothers. And you share it with them, and you share everything with them. Secondly, understand, men, that if you really want this second need to become deep and real and existential in your life, it is found in the spiritual practice of solitude and silence with God, where his gaze becomes real for you and his voice becomes the loudest voice inside of you. Thirdly, understand that your value is because God says, "You are my beloved son." Your value is not found in what step you're on, how many meetings you attended the past 30 days, what chip you have, and how many days you've been sober. Your value is found in what God declares over you. And finally, during this time of healing, do not put upon your partner during her trauma and her healing, don't put upon her an expectation to meet these alive needs for you. It's not the time. Your needs matter. I'm not saying that they don't matter. I'm saying you're in a season right now where you need to go to God and that safe circle of brothers and you can get your alive needs met. But don't put that expectation on her. She often doesn't have the capacity for that. She's trying to get her own alive needs met in the midst of a traumatized state. And she doesn't need to also try to meet your needs at the same time. So with that, we're going to pause. Let me stop the recording. Then we'll open it up for shares.